time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does, and great to have you with us on this special Friday edition of the show. Special because, well, I wasn't supposed to be here. If you listened and watched yesterday's show, all across America and Canada, if you watched, I said we were going to be off on Friday. And that was the plan, to be off on Friday. We will be off for most of Friday, as it turns out. Coming up in about 10 minutes, you'll hear from Clint Hurdle, the former manager of the Rockies and the Pirates. Maybe designs on being a manager again in Major League Baseball. You'll want to hear that conversation coming up. That'll take care of much of the show, but we'll also have some comments from our friend Pat Pickens. Pat Pickens is the author and filmmaker. He created a documentary called The Whalers. He also wrote a book by the same name, which talks about the history of the franchise, which left the city of Hartford 28 years ago for Raleigh, North Carolina, where they are now the Carolina Hurricanes. And it's a conversation about the love affair between a city and its hockey team that's been gone now for almost 30 years. You won't want to miss that. But why am I here on a day that was supposed to be best of? Well, I just couldn't resist before the week was up. And I didn't want to wait till Monday to talk about it, because then by then it's 3 days old. I got to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, who decided to come out of hiding from some beachfront property in California on Thursday for a conversation with his best friend, Pat McAfee, and AJ Hawk and all the guys from the Pat McAfee Show. And what we heard from Aaron Rodgers was some explanations on what has happened, because for 3 months he hasn't been heard from. A lot of rumors, a lot of suggestions about where he might land, what he was demanding, and we learned some things from Aaron Rodgers in this conversation. One, we learned that it's still all about Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine. And he could say all the things he wants. He loves this attention, and I said this months ago, that Aaron Rodgers was going to drag this out as long as he can, because he loves nothing more than turning on a TV that he says he doesn't watch, or a newspaper that he says he doesn't read, or a website or social media that he says he doesn't pay attention to. He loves the fact that we're all talking about him as the draft approaches, and we should be talking about the guys in the draft and how they potentially change their lives and change the trajectories of different NFL teams. Aaron Rodgers loves that we're talking about him, so I'm giving him what he wants. The first thing he did was air some grievances on the Jets, which you knew that was going to happen eventually. While he played for the team, it was all, flowery rhetoric and how great it was and the team and all this. And then as soon as he's out the door, now he has a chance to tell his story. And with the exception of giving some nice comments about Christopher Johnson, the son of Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, it was basically a litany of grievance about how they didn't treat him with respect, how they called him to New York. He flew to New York on his own dime, and then it was only a 45-minute encounter, 25 minutes with the team, and then 20 minutes meeting with people on his way out the door, and how they didn't want him, and blah, 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 blah. So that garnered some headlines yesterday, and obviously here on Friday. But then it was the comments when Pat McAfee asked him about where he would be playing football next year and the teams he's met with. First he says, well, I'm not going to talk about each individual team. And then he proceeded to talk about 3 individual teams and situations: the Giants, the Steelers, and the Vikings. And went into detail about the conversations he had with those teams, even some of the lengths to which he went to avoid being detected by the media. I drove a Chevy Malibu. Don't tell us you don't get a kick out of this stuff, Aaron Rodgers. Don't tell us that, because you're a liar. You've lied before. You're lying again. And you really didn't refute with any sort of facts a lot of what's been reported in the media. Now, before I get to this clip of him talking about the Steelers in particular, and there's a reason I want to play this clip, it should be mentioned that part of the reason Aaron says hasn't really made up his mind is he's got a lot going on in his personal life. He's in a relationship. Congratulations. I clap for you. And he's got some people that are dealing with some issues in his inner circle that he's trying to help them take care of. Totally respect that. He's 41 years old. The idea that it's a foregone conclusion he would play next year unless it's the perfect situation, which is something I've said from the start, I don't have a problem with. That said, A.J. Hawk tried to pin him down on the idea of where he is going to play next year, or one of the other clowns that works on the McAfee Show tried to pin him down on the idea of Pittsburgh being his next destination. Pat McAfee tried to do the same. Here's what Aaron Rodgers said to that.
Listen, this entire time I haven't felt like I owed anybody some sort of decision at any point. This is my life. Like I said, things are different now. My life is different. My personal life is different. I have stuff in the inner circle that, I'm intimately close to, that it's really important to me. And I've been upfront with him about that and said, listen, if you need to move on, if you need to do something, by all means, like nothing but love and respect, if that's a decision that needs to be made. But there's been no deadline, and yeah, I've talked to Mike T many times.
Talking about Mike Tomlin when he mentions Mike T. Look, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to wind up in Pittsburgh. I think they are probably looking at their options for the draft. They could draft Shedeur Sanders. He could wind up in New Orleans. He may not make it to the Steelers at their spot in the draft. But I think ultimately he winds up playing in Pittsburgh. I just think the two sides are doing this dance. The other thing that was interesting that Rodgers said, he's willing to play for as little as $10 million. There had been talks of him wanting $40, $50 million, whatever it may be, 2 years, all of that. He says he's willing to play for $10 million. He doesn't care. It's not about the money. We'll see how that plays out when whatever contract is announced is announced. Minnesota is still in play. I don't think the Giants are in play. I think it comes down to Minnesota and Pittsburgh at this point. And if I had to guess, I think the Steelers are his ultimate destination. I think that's where Aaron Rodgers winds up playing. After all is said and done, based on what I heard him say yesterday, the way the Steelers have conducted themselves in this offseason, we'll have to wait and see. All right, now it's time for Best of SportsWrap. We've got a conversation coming up with Clint Hurdle, former Rockies and Pirates manager. Later on, Pat Pickens, author, filmmaker, the Whalers documentary. Talk to him about that as well. And then we're back on Monday with a regular show. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Friday edition of SportsWrap. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. Thrilled in this special edition of SportsWrap to have a conversation with former MLB manager Clint Hurdle. I was looking forward to this for a few weeks now, even longer. We were trying to set this up with Clint Hurdle, who is the former MLB manager, player, managed with the Rockies and Pirates. And he's got a great new book out. If you get a chance, go and grab it. It's a quick read. It's called Hurdleisms, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball. And Clint Hurdle is our guest on SportsWrap today. And it's such an honor and a privilege to talk to you. I met you. True story. I met Clint Hurdle in 1994. I was the bat boy for the AA Colorado Rockies franchise in New Haven, the New Haven Ravens, and you were a roving minor league hitting instructor. And that was the first time I ever met you. And you were a gentleman and great to be around then. And it's amazing that 31 years later, it's like this full circle moment where I'm talking to you now. What do you remember about sort of not just the days of being a roving minor league hitting instructor with the Rockies, but the grind that it took from a coaching and managerial standpoint to get to that level in the major leagues?
Well, Jason, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Number one. I'm in Spokane, Washington today. I'm actually starting my first visit of my deployment into our minor league system. So this week it'll be Spokane, next week it'll be Fresno. And it always stirs up a lot of wonderful memories of my minor league time playing, coaching, managing. In retrospect, the time in New Haven was very unique because we were sharing the field with Yale University.
Yeah.
Our initial locker room was over in the athletic facilities at Yale, so it was almost like a Legion ball, structured daily workout, because we would drive our cars over to the university. We would the players would dress inside, they'd drive the cars back over to the park to work out, and to play a game. So there was driving back during the day. I can remember the first day we showed up for games, Rick Matthews and I, who was our minor league pitching coordinator at the time, we went out and the mound was almost flat. It looked like a softball field mound. And Rick Matthews got me in a car and we drove to some True Value, Ace Hardware. I'm not sure where we drove to. We got a bunch of dirt, a bunch of tools. I think we went to a nursery as well to get the dirt. But Rick Matthews built the mound the first day we were in New Haven on the ballpark, so we could play a game that night. And then we ended up putting the trailers out there. But it was a fun time. It was a good town. It was a good town for us to be in. You got to see a lot of good players come through there.
Oh, my God. Derek Jeter was in Double-A that year with Albany. Armando Benitez was in the Orioles organization. There were some good players in that league.
We had our Todd Helton, I think, was in that league.
A couple of years later. He might have been the next year, but yeah.
A lot of good players, a lot of good time. Tough league. But it is nice to revisit those memories from time to time, because they're the ones that, the emotions that come with. That's what make memories last. I think the emotions that come with it. And when you're building something new, we were an expansion franchise.
Yep.
Nothing comes easy. You got to share a field with a university. You got to build your mound. You got to do it. And then when you look back in retrospect, where it's come from, and now that Double-A part of the Rockies organization has now morphed into Hartford,
which is one of the most successful. It's one of the most successful franchises in minor league sports right now.
It is. The social media presence they have, the ballpark entertainment, the food, the field, the facility.
Yeah.
And obviously it's in a rough part of the city down there that it is slowly helping the city revitalize as well. So Hartford's a good place. If you haven't been to Hartford, watch the Yard Goats, you need to come out and see them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let me ask you something. You talked about how we just revisited New Haven, and you mentioned Hartford. I'm in the middle of writing my own first book. And what I'm finding is I'm learning things about myself that either I forgot or didn't realize. Did you have that sort of process with Hurdleisms as you go through and start putting this together? Do you start to realize things about yourself that maybe you didn't before you went through this process?
I think I revisited a lot of emotions, and then I revisited a lot of lessons. And sometimes they were painful, sometimes they were successful, sometimes they were euphoric, sometimes it was sharing with others. The one thing I did need to go back and do is I had to call people and say, hey, I'm writing this book, and here's the memory I have. You were in it. Does this sound right? Am I playing this out right? Because the last thing you want to do is throw down all the way you remembered everything happening. Because sometimes, as my wife reminds me all the time, Carla reminds me, I have a tendency to embellish some of the things I remember. And the main point in me writing the book, and I think anybody writing a book, is you want to get it right. You want to get the facts right. You want to get the thoughts right, so people can hopefully plug into those emotions you're sharing, those lessons you're sharing, or the failures you're sharing, so they take the journey with you.
How long of a break did you take between retirement and getting back into the game in this current form that you're in?
I was fired the last day of the season, 2019.
Yeah, so I was 19. All right.
Then I actually, in the 1st of November, I interviewed for a position with San Diego as a hitting coach, and I was offered a job. I mean, before I landed back from my trip to San Diego, AJ Preller had a contract in my email box, a 2-year deal. It kind of caught me off guard because I was just going to hoping to go back and talk to my wife about what I said, what we're thinking. And then there it is. Here's an opportunity. I sat down with Carla and I explained the next step. If that was one we took, we'll go to Arizona. She goes, oh, okay, we haven't been to Arizona in a long time. spring training out there again. Okay, well, we'll figure it out with the kids. They're in school. And then San Diego. Oh, yeah, Clint, can you go any farther west? I go, no, not unless it's Hawaii. She goes, so, all right, we'll figure that all out. As we walked through this process, my wife, Carla, said, we'll figure it out, I don't know, 10, 12 times. And I stopped at the end of it, and I thought to myself, maybe I need to figure some things out. So a couple weeks later, I came out and said, I'm just going to put the uniform in the closet. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to sign a lifetime contract with a home team. I thought that sounded cute, right? And I did take 2 years off. I was out 2 years, Jason, before I came back.
All right. I want to talk to you about life back in baseball in this current iteration for you. Clint Hurdle is hanging out with us on the show. He's got a book. It is fantastic. It is called Hurdleisms, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball. More to do with Clint Hurdle, the former big league skipper and player, here on SportsWrap. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. Hanging out with Clint Hurdle, former MLB manager and player. Sometimes I think people forget Clint as Sammy Arnell joins the conversation as well. I think sometimes people forget that you had a successful playing career, and you have these two things that both of them define you with Major League Baseball, but both are so completely different. Give me a sense as you sort of went through writing this book, Hurdleisms, for people who don't know, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball, from Clint Hurdle that we're talking about today. Give me a sense in sort of the separation between player and manager, how you combine those two things in this book.
Well, I think you compartmentalize them as kind of tell your journey. You try and explain your journey. And there was the part, it was education, it was high school, it was minor league ball, it was pro ball. And then it was, as I shared the book, sometimes people would say, so you're going to retire. I retired at the age of 30, and I didn't retire. I tell people, only good players retire. People stopped calling me to ask me to play. So that's a different way for your career to end. And I actually kicked off my coaching career by threatening to continue to play with Steve Scriver, our minor league player development guy with the Mets. He kept asking me about managerial opportunities, and he started at the bottom of the ring. I just played 10 years in the big leagues. The last 3 years were hard. I went to camp as a non-roster player the last 3 years. And this is after, the cover of Sports Illustrated, a World Series trip, a couple playoff things against the Yankees, the A's, championship teams in Kansas City. And then you're at the end of it, you're a non-roster guy, 3 state springs, but you make the team each year in spring training as a non-roster guy, which is not easy to do. But I tried just to walk that transition through, yes, you're a player. And you know what? Once you're a player, the only people that really remember that you're a player sometimes is you. Because there's more guys playing. There's a different group playing. There's a different group to watch. There's a different generational, time lapse going on where they're gravitating to their players. My players were Brooks Robinson, Al Kaline. My favorite player was Al Kaline. Second favorite was Brooks. My third favorite was Tony Oliva. Then as a player, you have your favorite. George Brett, what a favorite player there. I loved Amos Otis. Amos Otis took care of me in a way that not many people ever knew. But, to play with Pautek, to play with Frank White, to play with Hal McRae, all the men I was fortunate to play with, Johnny Bench, Ozzie Smith. It's crazy. I was blessed beyond measure of the experiences I had while in the uniform and the time I was in the uniform. And one of the things I do share is, when I played, I really feel I was blessed to play in the perfect time for me. And when you talk about the players I was playing against, when you can keep throwing out one name and people know who you're talking about, the time I played, there was all kinds of lefty, okay? Manny, Thurman, Reggie, Sparky, Goose, Vida. You can go on and on and on. It's one name. One name is thrown out and you're like, bam, okay, we know who you are. You don't see that or hear that as much anymore. So I just try and revisit those things, not to romanticized so much, is just to kind of give them a time walk back through what was going on and what has gone on in the game of baseball, especially in my life. And I had a couple coaches along the way, and their names that not a lot of people gravitate to. But Dennis Papke was a hitting coach I had in the minor leagues. I got sent back down. Gordy McKenzie was a coach I had in AAA when I went to get sent back, but then came up and he was a big league third base coach for us as well.
Look, having spent time around minor league baseball, I could definitely appreciate that it is a very difficult game to play, and the mental struggle that goes along with trying to achieve that certain level of acceptable whatever it is in terms of just trying to be the very best player that you can be. You said that this appealed to you, this job in scouting and working with kids, and what about that is so attractive to you? Because you probably, look, in this day and age of managers always getting other opportunities, you certainly were successful as a manager. You probably could have, hung around and politic to try and become a manager again. You mentioned the opportunity to become a hitting instructor with the Padres, be a hitting coach. Was there a reason you decided that after 2019, the time was then to not do that anymore, to not be in that rat race, that hamster wheel?
Well, yeah, it was basically because of my family. My family had done nothing to make sacrifices. My wife, Carla, has been instrumental in any growth, maturity, success I've had since we first met. We've been married 25 years. She has sacrificed. She has made adjustments. She's figured things out on the fly. She's audibled more than Peyton Manning. She's done some incredible things. And it was just like, man, it's just time to lay it down. I had 2 young children in high school. Little did I know, by laying it down in the middle of November of 2019, the rest of the world was going to lay it down with me in the middle of March when COVID hit. So then I find myself homeschooling 2 kids in high school. And you know what? As scary as that was, and as weird and hard times, how rewarding it was, because I was home. There wasn't any other options. As Carla would remind me all the time, your swipe key doesn't work at PNC anymore. You got nowhere to go. You need to figure things out here at home. And it was good for me to be home and to actually revisit how valuable my wife has been to myself and my family. Because for every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks of every month, I get to check out. At that time, we had Christian, who was in high school. He was a sophomore. Madison, our special needs daughter, was a senior in high school. My wife never checked out. She never took 2 weeks off a month to go on a road trip. Whether you're managing, whatever you're doing, she shows up, posts up every day. She's one of those unheralded heroes. She was a first responder for our family. And to watch that every day and to be a part of that every day for 2 years, I thought I appreciated her. I thought I loved her unconditionally. But all those feelings I had for her grew over the 2-year period being at home. And I probably added a little bit more to her plate than she really wanted, because when I went back to work, guys, there was no crying at the house. The flag didn't go to half mast. Dad's leaving and can start traveling a little bit again. So I learned so many valuable lessons being at home and watching my wife navigate our family day and their kids' day, and my day, that it was very meaningful. It was very meaningful.
The name of the book is Hurdleisms. Clint Hurdle is our guest, the former big league manager with the Rockies and Pirates. More to talk about with him. Don't go anywhere. SportsWrap continues, and so does the conversation with Clint Hurdle, former big league manager and player with the Rockies and the Pirates. Clint, you have the distinction, Clint, of having managed 2 franchises that have really struggled here. Obviously you did a great job with the Pirates as a manager of the year, managing the Rockies, all of that. But in terms of the overall sort of trajectory of those franchises, you look at where both have been in recent years. some managers go into, Dave Roberts is managing the Dodgers. Some guys just take high profile, successful jobs that are already in situations that are built to win. What was it about those two jobs that appealed to you as opposed to trying to get one of those maybe major market jobs with a team that's spending tons of money and is a perennial success, as opposed to the teams you took over in Colorado and Pittsburgh?
Well, one of the things I use frequently, and it's in the book, Hurdleisms, is there's two kinds of people in this world: those that are humble and those that are about to be.
Yes.
I never thought of
You've
myself.
posted that on X too, and I've read that. Yeah.
I never thought of myself as, I need to be this kind of manager. It wasn't until late in my playing career that I ever realized coaching could be an option, because I stopped playing. I started watching more and learning more. And then once I started coaching, I got a minor league managing opportunity. And I realized, you know what? I actually think God prepared me to be a minor league manager through all the different challenges and things I went through as a minor league player and a major league player. There wasn't much a kid could come in my office and ask me about that I hadn't already walked through. And I definitely could tell them some things that won't work. I don't have all the answers on what it will take for something to work, but I can share with them my failures, the way I chose to do some things and how that's got no shelf life. That's got no track record. That will not work. I could actually say it. But once I started managing, I did realize then that I really liked being a part of something bigger than myself. So I was the hitting coach in Colorado when our manager was fired. And I actually thought Dan O'Dowd was coming to my house that day to fire me. He called up and said, "I got to meet you. I'm coming to your house." No general manager comes to the hitting coach's house. I don't think this ever happened in the world of baseball. But he called me up and said, "I need to come to your house." And I was like, so I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, we were not playing well. It was early 2009. I called. I said, "Dad, the GM's coming to my house." He goes, "Well, what's that all about?" I said, "He's coming to fire me. We can't hit water if we fell out of a boat." So Dan came by, and then all of a sudden he sits down and he starts telling me, the struggles, the challenges. And he goes, "By the way, earlier this morning, I had to make a hard decision. I let Buddy Bell go." I went, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I let the manager go." And so I'm thinking, okay, now you're going to let the hitting coach go. He goes, "And I'm here to really ask you if you'll step in as the interim manager for the rest of the year." And I went, "What?" I didn't even say what. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't spit. I just froze. And I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Clint, I'm here to ask you to step into the manager's job." And once I shook myself, I was like, "Yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever I can to help."
If a team called you tomorrow and said, "We have a managerial opening," there's no thought to you to reconsider getting back into managing?
No, that's changed over the years. I would have a conversation. I do think I have one more push in me if it happens organically. If not, I would have no regrets on never managing again. I managed for 17 years in the big leagues. I was blessed. Well, that's without winning a World Series, which is somewhat of a feat, because obviously we built something well, because people aren't going to keep you in that position of ownership when those organizations are worth $1 billion and more if you're not doing something right. And for two service periods, one 8 years and one 9 years, to stay in the place, I think I've shown the ability to help build a brand.
How did you feel about Major League Baseball's handling of Pete Rose and now the conversations of taking him off the ineligible list and giving him an opportunity to have his day in Cooperstown, even though he won't really have that opportunity? It'll be more for his family. How do you sort of process that whole thing and the way it's played out?
Well, for me, I only speak for myself.
Sure.
It's been a journey of adjustment. I played against Pete. I've talked to Pete.
Yeah.
I've done shows with Pete. I know Pete. Other people know him way better than I do, but I know Pete. And he was the kind of guy that you wanted him on your team and you didn't like him at all if he's on somebody else's team. And away from the park, you might not like him at all, but there's a lot of people that did like him. So the fact that the gambling issue, was so huge and so well documented. For a while, I was that guy that, it's Article 21. You break that. Everybody knows that. I've heard that every year I heard that, and then as I got older and stepped back and watched some things and watched the game go the way it's gone, and now you can bet on about 2,700 different things during the course of a ball game, and there's gambling houses right on the same site as the ballparks. And you can see behind home plate when the signage flips and it's this or it's that, or I say put him in. I mean, I've flipped 100% because for me, at the end of the day, look what he did on the field.
Clint Hurdle. The name of the book is Hurdleisms. I already got him to commit to a version 2.0 because he already mentioned one during this conversation that he could put in it. Make me a promise. First of all, you got to come back on the show because I could talk baseball with you all day. You become a manager again, we're getting you on the show. Love it. Clint Hurdle. Congrats on the book. Enjoy Spokane, Washington. We'll talk to you soon. Documentary filmmaker Pat Pickens joins us to talk about the Whalers next. Welcome back to this special edition of SportsWrap. Anybody who's watched the show, listened to me in my radio iteration, I've always had a passion for sports teams that leave their cities and what happens to those cities afterwards. And if anybody's ever heard our hockey conversations on this show with Dennis Bernstein from SiriusXM NHL Radio, thefourthperiod.com, EJ Raddick when he comes on, I always bring up somehow the Whalers at some point in a conversation whenever I get the opportunity. So I thought it was a great idea to get this guy on because this weekend is the 28th anniversary of the Hartford Whalers departing the city of Hartford for Carolina, North Carolina, where they'd become the Carolina Hurricanes. And every year on the 13th, I watch the final Whalers game, and I sit in front of YouTube and I cry. This year, I have something different to watch, and we will explain that in just a moment with our special guest on the show today, Pat Pickens, author, and now I can say documentary filmmaker, which probably he didn't plan to have on his list of things a couple of years ago when he wrote a book called The Whalers that he put out. What year did you put out The Whalers? 21?
21, yeah.
2021, he put out a book called The Whalers, and now he has a 90-minute film that will premiere this Sunday on NBC Sports in Boston. Where will it be available after that, Pat?
So it's going to actually be pretty available on the NBC family of networks. So I've been keeping this close to the vest because we didn't have an official announcement to make. But yeah, we're going to premiere it in Boston on NBC Sports Boston, the home of the Celtics, on Sunday the 13th. It's going to appear on, if you're in New York, it's going to be on SNY, the home of the Mets, on the 16th. And if you're in Greater Philadelphia, we're going to be on NBC Sports Philadelphia on Easter Sunday, the night of Easter Sunday. So, we're going to do a bunch of screenings, a bunch of TV viewings. So SNY, NBC Sports Boston, and NBC Sports Philadelphia for now, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
That is fantastic. So this chronicles basically, and I haven't had a chance in all full disclosure. I only got a copy of the documentary yesterday. I have not had a chance to screen it yet, but I'm fully aware of the book. I know of your work, so I wanted to have you on to walk us through what this 90-minute documentary is going to show people.
It's going to show people, I think what it's going to show people and what I strive to do with this process in the Whalers is basically to showcase, there's a lot there in 90 minutes, but it's really to showcase that this is, people might know the logo, people might know the brass bonanza, people might know, what I like to refer to as the enduring kitsch of the Whalers. And we get into all that too. We get into how the brass bonanza was unveiled. We chronicle the logo. We got Peter Good on camera, the creator of the logo. Right, he passed in 2023, but we had interviewed him on camera in 2022, and it's really special to have him in the film, especially again since he passed away less than a year after we spoke with him. But yeah, it's going to chronicle the whole history of the Whalers, and I think, Jason, you lived it to some degree, but I think It's to me, it's to prove to people that this is more than just the logo. It's more than just brass bonanza. It's that there was this was a team. This was a hockey team. Like Wayne Gretzky would come to Hartford and play games.
Mario Lemieux. I remember watching Mario Lemieux.
Yeah, and I think we get caught up in the logo and the nostalgia piece and playing at the shopping mall and forget that in some cases that like this was somebody's favorite team. That this was, a lot of people's favorite team, even though it's from a bygone era, and the economy really doomed some things, and Chuck Kate and I talked. He said it's an economic story, this history of the Hartford Whalers, but that there was a team there that played the NHL hockey for 18 years. That it was the only major professional sports team in Connecticut's history, and so we chronicle how it got there, why it left, and all of the kind of weird, quirky things that happened in between. And how they live on it, that's the amazing thing, is how they continue to be more relevant than ever.
Well, what is it about this franchise that does keep them so relevant and keep them alive? Who is it, aside from you and your work, who is it that keeps this franchise alive, and how do they do it?
It's weird because it's not, it's definitely not me, but it is the logo. The logo is so phenomenal. It is Brass Bonanza. I think there is a level of group, people are coming to realize how far ahead of its time the organization was. They invented the team store. They were the first professional sports team with a team store. We touched on this in the film, had Chris Berman to speak about it, that, the whole, derision, which I'm sure you heard, Ranger fans used to deride Whaler fans. You play in a shopping mall with the song chant. But now how that's the thing now, right? Atlanta is like the envy of baseball because it has retail, it has dining, it gets you to the place and you stay for the game. And the Whalers did that, 25, 30 years before Atlanta did. So, and then I think there is this level of, I would say, curiosity that Hartford was a major professional sports market. So like you watch The Crawl on ESPN, or you turn on ESPN2 for a hockey game at the Hartford Civic Center, and you would see Hartford across the bottom, So there is that level of nostalgia piece for people of a certain age, where as we get older, we long for our youth a little bit, and that Hartford could be a major league market. It was the smallest market ever. But, and again, it produced so many incredible people that are still around the game. So we spoke with, Ray Ferraro and Pat Verbeek and Kevin Dineen and those guys who are still around the game and are at the highest levels of the sport that love talking about Hartford, which I'm personally grateful for, because I wouldn't have even had a book if not for many of those tales from many of those people. And, but yeah, it's definitely that uniqueness of Hartford as a, wait, Hartford was a major league sports stat. How about that?
Yeah. It certainly was. Odds and Ends wraps up this Friday edition of the show. Kurt Helin will stop by. We'll preview the NBA playoff weekend action next. Welcome back to the show. Just about time to wrap things up. Make sure you subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, also our YouTube channel by the same name. Let's end it with some NBA playoff talk. Kurt Helin dropped by the show to help preview some of the big matchups as the NBA postseason, the play-in tournament's all done, and now we've got some NBA playoff action to discuss. Knicks and Pistons is very intriguing to me if we're talking about the East, as well as the Pacers and the Bucks. Is it more than just the Pistons will push the Knicks? Could the Pistons win this series?
Unlikely. I think you have to learn to win a little bit in the NBA, and I trust Brunson's clutch. Cat was huge in the playoffs last year. I think he'll have a very good playoffs this year again. I expect them to just be too much. But Cade Cunningham's going to have a series. They don't really have a good guy to defend him. He likes to beat you from the mid-range. He knows how to operate those pick and rolls smoothly, and they're physical. The bad news for Knicks fans, hypothetically, out there, if there were any in this conversation, Jason, is that this is the kind of series you come out of just banged up on the other side. You're just sore and beat down. It's going to be physical and tough. And then you go into the next series against what most likely will be Boston team that looks like the best team in the East. And that's that's a rough go when you're a little banged up.
What did the Knicks learn about themselves with Brunson out for that extended period with the ankle injury that could help them here?
They did find some other offense at points, and OG had stepped up with some plays. I think I don't want to say it's always good to be without your star, but they are so dependent on Brunson to create offense that having a few games with some time without him and being able to keep their head above water by finding enough offense elsewhere, and their defense got a lot better. It showed them a path to at least what they can do with the bench in the postseason.
How important is an opening round series win for the Bucks when you're talking about the future of that franchise and Giannis?
Watch Giannis's body language, right? Like through this series, like how I'm not one of the big body language guys out there. This is not the Bill Simmons body language podcast, but this is one case where you really should be watching it. And a lot of teams around the league are. How frustrated does he get? And especially, they're going to at least start this series without Damian Lillard. We'll see if he rejoins them at some point. First round series can drag out for a while. But that's a tough series for them against a team that wants to get up and down. It's going to be an entertaining series. But them getting bounced in the first round, there's going to be a lot of eyes on Giannis and whether he really wants to be there long term or not.
Move out to the West here for a moment and talk to me about the Nuggets and Clippers. The Clippers have sort of become my little glam pick out here in the West with the way they've played. And when you got Kawhi going 42 and 47 minutes the last two games of the season and really showing out here over the last 20, 21 games, maybe even a little more than that. You look at the way he's played and you put that with Harden, who's obviously rejuvenated here down the stretch, what Zubats gives them in the middle. All of a sudden, the Clippers kind of look tantalizing here.
I actually picked them to win this series, and I don't do that with a ton of confidence, but enough. The bet is this. Kawhi Leonard can play 7 games, right? Like that's kind of what you're betting on. James Harden will play in 7 games and be good in 4 of them, or 5 of them maybe. But they are, look, this is again, Ty Lue has coached a very good defensive team with Zubats, who's on my all-defensive team, in the paint, owning it. And then when Kawhi is going like this, when he is the guy who can just get to his spots and he's so strong. You can't stop him from getting there. You can't stop him once he gets there. He gets buckets. James Harden still took over in overtime against the Warriors, had 12 in OT. He's capable of those stretches still where he's elite. And Norman Powell puts up buckets and other guys step up for them. That's a deep team that finds different ways to beat you, and I kind of like them against the Nuggets in a long series.
If there's anything that scares you about the Wolves when you talk about this Lakers T-Wolves matchup, what is it?
They can match up the Lakers' size. The Lakers don't have a true center, but they're just big across the board. It's 6'9" guys. Luke is 6'8", LeBron 6'9". Just across the board, they're big. Minnesota's one of the teams that can match that. Has had good playoff success. Has a center in the middle that can be a problem. Obviously, in Rudy Gobert defensively, and they have Ant, who's due to kind of step up, wants that moment. So they're physical, they're big. I think they make this a difficult series. Ultimately, I didn't pick them, and Luka Doncic will just be in the nightmares of Timberwolves fans.
Yeah, I tell you, Gobert. I think Gobert definitely poses some problems for them in that series as well, in terms of what he's able to do in the middle. Last thing before I let you go here, just back to my Knicks for a second. If they go out early, is Thibodeau at risk? I know you say he's a Rose guy and all that.
Yeah,
but
that's my first reaction is always like he's a Leon Rose guy, so I don't know. But that they would do that. He's kind of the identity of that team, but he is as our friend Vlad had put it, he is a coach with a expiration
got a shelf
date.
life. Yeah.
He is his style will wear teams out. And is it that where you need to change? Have you gotten to the point where maybe going and getting a Mike Malone kind of guy, fiery but in a different way, just a different voice in the locker room? Nobody's going to really come in and change anything dramatically, but do they need to hear it from somebody else?
Danny Hurley, telling you, Danny Hurley, go get Danny Hurley. He won't say no to that job. And that'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you to our guests, Clint Hurdle, also Pat Pickens, Kurt Helin, Sam Yarnell for his help, you for watching throughout the entire week. Enjoy Sports Wrap Weekend Edition if it's on this station. If not, we'll see you back here on Monday for another edition of Sports Wrap. Bye-bye.